Welcome to the debate. Usually when we sit down to analyze the structures of civilization, we're looking horizontally, comparing, say, the East to the West, or different periods of our own history. But today, we are doing something radically different. We are looking vertically. We're engaging in a comparative analysis of Earth's social and political systems against those of a visitor from a neighboring inhabited world. Specifically, we're looking at the institutions of a continental nation that frankly claims to have solved the problems of war and poverty that still baffle us here. And the central question we're tackling today, it really strikes at the very heart of our democratic experiment. Is the path to a superior civilization paved with, absolute liberty and unconditional mercy? Or does the survival of a species require rigorous social engineering, restricted voting, and the cold logic of biological regulation?
I am the advocate. I'll be defending the messy, chaotic, but I believe deeply human potential of universal rights.
And I am the dissenter. I speak today from the perspective of a nation that has existed for millennia on a continent about the size of your Australia, isolated by mountains and sea. And we look at your world, well, not with malice, but with deep concern. To us, Earth is a cautionary tale. My argument is that true civilization isn't about freedom in the abstract, it's about results. We've achieved peace and prosperity because we had the courage to reject sentimental equality and embrace rigorous competence.
It really is a rare opportunity to have this discussion. So let's start with the big picture. Just to ground our listeners, you look at Earth and you see a world sort of teetering on the brink of its own confusion. So paint the picture of your home. Why are you so convinced your model is the superior destination for a society?
Because we look at the data, not the dreams. My nation is a federation of 100 free states. We have a population of 140 million people, a number we keep stable by design, not by accident. Our citizens live on average 90 years. That is significantly longer than even your most advanced nations. But the statistics that truly matter are the ones about stability. We have no government debt, we have no standing armies for internal suppression because we have no need for them. We have conquered the machine, rather than being enslaved by it. When I look at Earth, I see a civilization obsessed with the right to be mediocre. You allow the ignorant to choose your leaders. You allow the non-productive to tax the productive. You allow the genetically defective to dilute your species' vitality, all in the name of mercy. You call this liberty. We call it suicide. We chose to prioritize the survival of the organism, the state, over the whims of the individual cells.
The whims of the individual. Now that's a telling phrase right out of the gate. And I won't deny the allure of your stability. A world without debt, without war, with a 90-year lifespan. That sounds like a paradise to many. But I'd argue that the mess you see on Earth is actually the friction of moral growth. We are attempting something harder than you are. We're trying to build a civilization that leaves no one behind. We believe that the struggle to include the weak and the marginalized creates a kind of spiritual resilience that your engineered efficiency just cannot replicate. We're betting on the soul, not just the statistic.
And while you bet on the soul, your cities burn, your debt mounts, and your economies collapse. Let's move from philosophy to the actual mechanics of governance, because that is where your universal worth argument, it crumbles. Governance requires skill. It requires high intelligence and broad experience. On my world, we do not treat the selection of leaders as some kind of popularity contest open to anyone with a pulse.
You're referring to your restrictions on suffrage. This is one of the most contentious points of your system.
I am referring to the fact that on my world, voting is a privilege earned by service, not a birthright granted by breathing. We operate on a system of weighted suffrage. It is not one person, one vote. We have 5 brackets of voting power. Every citizen initiates their potential to vote at age 20, but their actual influence is determined by their contribution to the state.
So the more taxes you pay, the more you vote? It sounds like a plutocracy, a government basically bought and paid for by the rich.
That is a crude simplification. It misses the point entirely. It is a government by the productive. We average the taxes paid over 5-year periods. If you are a heavy taxpayer, you are demonstrating two things: a high capacity for management and a high investment in the collective good. You can earn up to 10 votes this way. But it's not just about money. We value service, we value education, but yes, we do weigh the voice of the producer higher than the voice of the consumer.
But the implication is clear. If you're struggling, if you are poor, your voice is diminished.
If you are dependent on the state, your voice is non-existent. This is the hard truth you refuse to face. Those who contribute nothing to the treasury or who rely on the state for sustenance do not vote. Why should the insolvent direct the finances of the solvent? It is a fundamental conflict of interest. On Earth, you have a system where the non-producers can vote themselves benefits from the pockets of the producers. That is a mathematical feedback loop that always leads to bankruptcy.
Or it leads to social safety nets. It leads to the idea that a society is a community, not just a corporation. If you strip the vote from the poor, you remove their only nonviolent means of advocating for their own interests. You guarantee that the laws are written only to benefit the productive elite. I mean, history on Earth shows that when an elite hoards power, they don't govern benevolently, they govern selfishly.
And yet, our leaders are far more benevolent than yours because they are competent. And this brings me to the schools of statesmanship. This is perhaps the greatest divergence between our worlds. On Earth, a failed business owner, an actor, a demagogue can hold the highest office if he just smiles enough. On my world, no one, absolutely no one, can hold a position of public trust without a degree from these rigorous institutions.
I have to admit, that is the one aspect of your system that is genuinely seductive to many of us, the idea of professionalizing leadership.
It is common sense. You would not let an untrained butcher perform heart surgery on your child. You wouldn't let a child fly a jet. Yet you hand the complex machinery of civilization over to amateurs. Our schools of statesmanship create a class of trained administrators. The wealthy on our world don't idle. They work 6 hours a day and then spend their evenings studying statesmanship, hoping for the honor of serving. It is a meritocracy in the truest sense of the word.
I see the logic, and I do respect the commitment to education, but merit is often defined by those already in power. By limiting the pool of leaders to those who can access these schools and limiting the vote to those who pay high taxes, you create a closed loop. It may be efficient, but it lacks the chaotic innovation that comes from the grassroots. I mean, the unwashed masses on Earth have produced some of our greatest leaders, people who would have been silenced in your system simply because they were poor.
And how many tyrants have they produced? How many wars have been started by the passions of the mob? We view the state as an organism. The brain must direct the feet cannot direct the brain. We have simply formalized that biological reality.
That analogy of the organism, it's a dangerous one. Because if the state is a body, then defective cells must be cut out. And this brings us to the darkest part of your utopia. Your efficiency isn't just political, it's biological. You don't just disenfranchise the weak, you eliminate them.
We cleanse the social fabric, yes. We have looked at your prisons. We have seen your asylums for the criminally insane. It is a house of horrors. You lock humans in cages for decades, letting them rot, or you release predators back into the streets to create new victims. We have no prisons. We have no hospitals for the insane.
Because you use lethal gas chambers.
We do, and we do not apologize for it. If a criminal proves themselves incurable, if an individual is violently insane beyond recovery, or, and this is crucial, if a public official betrays the trust of their office, they are executed. Painlessly, quickly, finally.
Wait, you include public officials in that list?
Betrayal of the public trust is a capital crime. If you seek the power of the state and use it for corruption, you forfeit your life. It ensures our leaders are honest. But regarding the criminals and the defectives, we do not waste the resources of the living on the hopeless.
Hopeless. That's a judgment call. That is where I fundamentally dissent. When you execute the feeble-minded or the incurable, you're playing God. You're assuming there's no potential for redemption, no value in a life that can't produce economic output. On Earth, we believe a society is judged by how it treats its weakest members, not its strongest.
And that is false mercy. Mercy to the individual criminal is cruelty to the collective community. You mourn the murderer, we protect the future victim. Our homicide rate is 1% of yours. 1%. Think of the thousands of lives saved, the suffering averted, because we had the resolve to remove the defects. We also practice genetic control. We segregate those with hereditary degeneration. We are breeding a stronger, smarter, healthier race. You allow defects to multiply in the name of freedom, and then you wonder why your crime rates soar.
But that's a slippery slope. Today you eliminate the violently insane. Tomorrow do you eliminate the political dissident, the artist who doesn't fit the mold? That's the terror of eugenics.
We eliminate those who threaten the survival of the whole. You are paralyzed by the fear of being judgmental, so you allow the cancer to consume the host. We chose surgery, and the patient, our society, is healthy.
I think this is where our worlds are just irreconcilable. We view that surgery as a loss of our own humanity. But I want to pivot, because we stay on this, we'll just talk past each other. There's an economic dimension to your society that, well, it suggests this ruthlessness pays off in quality of life. You mentioned earlier that you have conquered the machine. What does that actually look like for the average citizen?
It looks like freedom. Not the freedom to starve, which you have, but the freedom of time. Because we are efficient, and because we don't carry the dead weight of the non-productive, we do not need to toil endlessly. We have a 5-day work week. We work for 4 days, and we play or travel for 1. In fact, travel is a cornerstone of our culture.
Travel is leisure, or is it something more?
Travel is education. We do not have classrooms in the stagnant sense you do. Our students learn by doing. They travel with their mentors. The older students teach the younger ones. By age 18, every citizen is a skilled artisan. But more importantly, the entire nation travels. We spend months of the year moving, seeing our continent, interacting with different states. This prevents the very regionalism and tribal hatreds that seem to plague Earth.
That sounds incredible, honestly. But how is that funded? A society that travels for months and works 4 days a week? I mean, the math has to come from somewhere.
It comes from the land. This is another area where you are backward. On Earth, you allow private individuals to monopolize natural resources, or you allow the state to squander them. On my world, the federal government holds all natural resources, the mines, the waterfalls, the oil, the land itself, in trust.
So the state is the landlord, essentially.
Precisely. And the income from these resources does not go to a general slush fund for politicians. It is specifically earmarked for old age insurance.
Right there, that answers the pension crisis we're all facing.
We do not tax the labor of the young to support the old. That creates generational resentment. The Earth itself supports the elderly. The natural wealth of the planet pays for the retirement of those who have finished their labor. And because of this, we do not tax the home. A person's home is their sanctuary. The state has no claim on it.
That is an insight I wish we could apply tomorrow. The idea that natural resources belong to everyone and should fund their security, it's potent, and protecting the home from taxation would solve so much anxiety. We're moving toward automation on Earth, and many of us hope technology will liberate us like this.
But you cannot achieve this while you tolerate idleness. That is the difference. You want the 4-day work week, but you also want to support millions who refuse to work or who live off of speculation. On my world, idleness is despised. Even the richest men work. We mastered the machine because we demand that every citizen be a productive artisan. You are becoming enslaved by your machines because you lack the social discipline to manage them.
I would agree that we have a problem with unearned wealth. But I worry that your obsession with productivity flattens the human experience. I mean, is there room in your world for the poet who sells nothing? For the monk who prays in silence?
We have poets, but they are also artisans. We do not believe in a disconnect between the practical and the beautiful. But this touches on the private sphere. You mentioned the monk. We have no monks. We have no priests.
Right, that was the other shock in our pre-show discussion. You have no public religious institutions at all?
None. We have temples of philosophy for intellectual discourse, but religion, the relationship between the creature and the creator, is exclusively a family matter.
Exclusively? So no communal worship, no gathering of the faithful on a Sunday or a Friday.
Why would you outsource the most important relationship in the universe? On Earth, I see parents who abdicate their duty. They send their children to a priest or a state school to learn right from wrong, and the result is a breakdown of character. On my world, the father and mother are the high priests of the home. They are legally and morally responsible for the spiritual training of their children.
That sounds noble, but also isolating. One of the beautiful things on Earth is the religious community, the coming together of strangers to share a sacred space. It connects the CEO with the janitor. By privatizing religion so strictly, don't you risk creating these insular, tribal spiritualities?
We create strong families, and strong families make a strong state. You have weak families, and you try to patch the holes with a massive state or large religious institutions that inevitably seek political power. We separate church and state completely by keeping religion where it belongs, in the heart and in the home.
It's a rigorous independence, I'll grant you. You also mentioned housing in this regard.
Yes. To support the family, we mandate space. On Earth, I see people living in boxes, tenements, apartments stacked on top of each other. We outlawed that. No two families may live under one roof. Every family must have land. We prioritize the home as the laboratory of character.
You have order, yes. But it feels like the order of a well-kept laboratory.
And Earth feels like a petri dish that has been left out in the sun too long.
Touché. We are nearing the end of our time, and I want to try to synthesize this. You've presented a world that is, well, objectively safer, richer, and more efficient than ours. You've solved debt and crime, but the price is a rigid hierarchy and a lack of mercy for the fallen. So, if you could leave Earth with one warning, one actionable piece of advice, what would it be?
My message is that you are running out of time. You have great potential. Your passion and your diversity are energetic. But energy without direction is an explosion, not an engine. You cannot let the ignorant rule the wise. You cannot let the genetic drift of the defective drag down the healthy. And most importantly, you must learn that rights are nothing without obligations. You are obsessed with what the state owes you, but you ask too little of what you owe the civilization. Limit the vote to the responsible. Train your leaders in schools of statesmanship. Clear out the weeds so the garden can grow. If you do not, your liberty will consume itself, and you will end in tyranny or chaos.
And I hear that warning loud and clear. There are lessons here we should take to heart immediately, specifically about the professional training of leaders and the stewardship of natural resources. Those are insights that don't require us to sacrifice our humanity. But I will push back on the ultimate conclusion. Earth is learning the hard way, yes. We are stumbling. But we believe that when we finally achieve a global order, and I do believe we will, it will be sweeter because it was achieved by the voluntary cooperation of free peoples, including the weak, including the poor. We choose the messiness of the democratic assembly over the ruthless pruning of the biologist.
A lovely sentiment. I truly hope it keeps you warm when the systems fail.
The choice between security and liberty, between the order of the hive and the messiness of the human struggle. It is the eternal debate of evolving worlds. We thank you for bringing this neighborly perspective, as jarring as it may be to our ears.
It was my duty to share it.
Thank you for listening. Join us next time on The Debate.